All right. Today on Servant Leadership Library, we have a man who knows a thing or two about building organizations that last. And in fact, he literally wrote the playbook on leadership transition because in 2025, his firm, North Group Consultants, pulled off what most businesses only dream of: a thoughtful, successful, and dare I say, drama-free handoff of ownership and leadership. So spoiler alert, everyone, it wasn't luck. So our guest, Roger North, is the founder and former CEO of North Group. These days, you'll still catch him consulting with executives, guiding organizations through change, and showing folks that leadership isn't a title, it's a calling. So when he's not shaping leaders, you'll find him shaping his golf game or sneaking away with Caroline, his wife, for over 45 years. What a blessing.
Yeah.
Roger's resume reads like a masterclass in service, from business boards and community organizations to ministry leadership. His fingerprints are all over Lancaster and beyond. And in case you think this is just about volunteerism, let's not forget he was named Small Business Person of the Year by Lancaster Chamber back in 2019. So buckle up as we dive into the mind of who has spent 45 plus years mastering organizational development, executive leadership, and business growth, all while living out servant leadership at a very high level. So Roger North, welcome to the show. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Can I take you with me everywhere I go?
Anytime. I'll be there for you.
I mean, my business development efforts are go through the roof if I had you to.
I'll record it for you, you know?
Yeah, beautiful. Very, very good. Thank you. I appreciate
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. Well, you have what a wonderful career, right? For those who don't know you, how do you introduce yourself these days? Is it like founder, consultant, grandfather, golfer?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because that's changed, as you referred to in the introduction. We completed our generational transition, the mechanical parts of it and the legal parts of it just a few months ago.
Okay.
So I'm a part-time consultant of the firm that I founded, but that's priority number 3 in my life. So, and it always has been priority number 3, even when I was holding a different position.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that. Like, as we become business owners and creators, right? I can only assume I said to my wife in this business that we created that, number one was our kids and family growing up. And then, our faith was important to us. And then the business was important, although we put a lot of hours. Yeah. Can you share maybe, kind of what you meant by that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. Well, my first priority has always be a Jesus follower. Yeah. And that's easier said than done when we get occupied with other things. But I do believe that if we are serious about that, I was just reading a passage in the New Testament, which in my Bible was captioned guidelines for right living, something like that. Okay. And it actually, the concepts are fairly simple. Carrying them out in human nature is what's difficult. Hard. So starting from there. Second is as being a husband, father, now grandfather. And, my dad told me, gave me one sentence, which I've never forgotten. And I've told it to hundreds of men since then in hopes that they would grasp it because it was so meaningful to me. And the interesting part is my dad passed away prematurely when Carolyn and I were married, but before we had any children.
Oh, wow.
And the piece of advice he gave me was the greatest thing a father can do for his children is to love their mother. And I thought, wow. Sense of security, allow the children to grow up in a loving, peaceful, non-argumentative, non-contentious home. It doesn't mean we don't have things to discuss and carry out, but that seems inappropriate to me in front of young children. Give them a sense of security. And if it's real, if the love and affection, admiration, respect that the parents have for each other is real, as the children get a little older, they're going to be able to determine that. So you can't fake it.
Oh, I love it.
So that has been my second priority. And then, Nicholas, I would just mention that I was fortunate that when we started the company in 1997, I was 38 years old, I think. So I had already been in business for 16 years and seen what the temptations were and that sort of thing. And some folks gave me advice when I told them, hey, we're going to start a consulting business from scratch, a couple of folks, very well-meaning folks, fine people, told me, Roger, if you're going to start a business from scratch, you're going to have to put your whole heart and soul into that business, and it's going to occupy your time and attention for quite a while. And I thanked them for that, but I refused to follow that because that would have gotten in the way of priorities 1 and 2. Right. And somehow I had a sense that if priorities 1 and 2 stayed in place, it would facilitate number 3. Would it possibly slow growth or, make less money or some other thing like that? Yeah, maybe. Right. But the trade-off just didn't seem worthwhile to me. And so I thought to myself, and I probably said it to a couple of close friends, that advice actually may be true, and it may be carried out some places. But if that's what I have to carry out, I'll go back and work for somebody else, because I've done that before, and we could do that again. Right. So we moved into the start of the business with for me, that was 50 hours a week. Right. Now that's more hours than I was with. So I'm not like saying that, I was, at every school event or anything of that nature. Right. But we wanted to eat dinner together as a family, and we wanted to have weekends together as a family. And that worked in our situation. That worked in our situation.
Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's kind of like a match there. I realized, being in this business for over 20 some years, that if the measurement was a dollar figure or a size, then maybe we're not winning. But I didn't realize, it's maybe similar to you, as we grew and our family grew, one day we were at the dinner table, because that was one of our priorities, right? Even with all the activities. And one of our children said, hey, we're different. And I'm like, well, what does different mean? And my son said, he goes, my friends don't eat together. And I said, well, what does that mean to you? He goes, they don't seem very connected. And I'm like, just a young kid. I'm like, wow, that's a little crazy. And so it was just amazing to know that, so now my children are in college or married, but what they got out of just dinner, right? I think they have a master's degree in, tough love and learning, just even hearing business though. We didn't realize how much we spoke about people and human beings and treating, and how they apparently listen, whereas many times I guess we think our teenagers aren't. But what a blessing. And I think it is a testament to success, what we deem to be successful, I guess, right?
I think at some point in life, you almost all, I'll say, business people, if I can use that term, would have a scoreboard of some sort, multiple scoreboards. And I'm ridiculously competitive. I'm thinking about winning all the time. And so knowing that that's part of my makeup, and I think part of my God-given makeup, that it was less important for me to try to become less competitive and more important for me to establish the right scoreboards. And then the scoreboards need to be prioritized. Right. And of course, a business scoreboard of, a number of employees or amounts of revenue or profitability, whatever those things might be, is an aphrodisiac if we're not careful. And people ask you about it. More often than they ask me, hey, how many times did you have dinner with your family in the 30 days that were in the last month? I mean, nobody asked me that. But people do ask about the other things. So you've got to commit to your own. If you happen to be a competitive person, I'm sure you are.
Get a little in trouble for that sometimes.
Then the scoreboard is important. Is really important.
It's interesting you say that. I realized over the years too, obviously making sure that you make smart decisions on who you hang out with too. Right. Like how we tell our children, but I really realized that, there's such chaos and noise, and you talked about Jesus earlier, but I realized, man, I don't think we take enough quiet time. I realized for myself over the years with 4 children and activities, I'm like, that just seems like I'm not, you're always looking for something, but apparently I'm not listening because it's never quiet enough. And so you just reminded me of that as you spoke about that. And it just kind of changes your your being of believing in something bigger than yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And I had a young man I was talking to a week ago, and he said to me, he said, I love my job. I make really great money at it, and I'm a top producer. But I just realized that the other top producers on my team are divorced or twice divorced.
Wow.
And he goes, I don't want to be that.
Good for him.
And I was like, wow, like what an observation, right? And just kind of a recollection of, I think he just was turning 40, right? And so I was like, wow, you know, that's a very mature thing to pay attention to.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, that we're in Lancaster County, has a lot of generational businesses, right? And so I guess we'd also kind of tiered into many times we build a business and sell it because it's like an investment, right? And it seems as if you've taken a different approach to how you've transitioned kind of the business. Could you tell us a little bit about that? I'm sure listeners would love to know how you made it through that, especially from being in charge and creating and now working there, right? It has to be a little different.
Yeah, thanks for asking. And stop me if this gets too long, because when you live it, you know, it's pretty easy to re-articulate it, although it may not be completely accurate. But I think the first thing for me was deciding pretty early on that it would be important to perpetuate the business beyond myself because, and I hope this doesn't sound too high-minded, but because I interpreted the mission I was given as being God-given. And if it's God-given, I can't own it myself, and I can't be selfish about it. Now, certainly there were selfish moments there. But in our situation, it meant that, for me, it meant that it would be very difficult to maintain that mission and the core values of our company if it were handed over to someone who hadn't lived in that environment. So early on, I thought, okay, I verbalized. It's important for me. I'm an extrovert. Obviously, I'm talkative. To state things out loud, because when other people that I respect hear me say something, I've just built an accountability system. So I told people early on, I will never sell this business outside of North Group. And so we just knew that early on, before it was even worth anything. And so then it became a process early on of just bringing people on board who had potential to not only consult well, which certainly all of our team does, but one of my guys said to me one day, he said, you know, this is interesting. We hire leaders and help them become consultants, not the other way around. So that meant that we had a good field of folks who had the potential to take over the firm. And so we actually started that discussion in 2015.
Wow, okay.
And completed it in 2025. Yeah, so it was a 10-year process, but you're not talking about it and working on it every day.
It takes
every quarter we went off site with 4 other shareholders that I had at the time. And you know, there were challenging moments. There were moments when they called me to account for behaving in a way that wasn't facilitating the direction we wanted to go. And to have 4 other guys who I knew were just as smart, in some cases smarter than me, just as good leaders as I was, and perhaps better, call you to account, it gets your attention. And they got my attention more than one time when I was not being as consistent in behavior as in my articulation.
Well, and when you go through that process, I mean, I'm sure it's hard, right? Like, you started as the sole owner. Is that right? Like, initially?
No, I had a partner, Laura Shantz. Many of your listeners probably know. Just a wonderful person. And I want to give her credit here. I haven't probably done that often enough. I probably would not have started the business without Laura.
Really? Okay.
I needed her will, her enthusiasm to get started. And she left after 5 years and had a good parting of the ways. And so then I felt at that point, that was a significant point in my life, because I felt like I needed partners, other shareholders, because I knew at that point, I was in my early 40s at that point.
Okay.
That is challenging time for men.
Yeah.
Because it's about the point when we think we've got it. You know, I figured this thing out. I'm successful. Making a living. My last name is out front, and you begin to feel your oats, and then you realize, man, if I go down that path, that probably is not going to end well. So I really wanted accountability in my life. So I have always had other shareholders who had both a missional interest and a financial interest in the business. And so the first person was an employee at the time, Dennis Clemmer, who bought some of Laura's shares, was older than me, more mature than me. And every once in a while, he's a man of few words. He would just come into my office and say, you know, Roger, we're not going to do that. So be something that thing that I came up with and started blathering about and maybe dreaming about or something. And he would just say, you know, Roger, we're not going to do that. And then once he would say that, I would say, yeah, you're right.
It would reset you.
Yes. Yes. And I have had numerous people who've very respectfully and lovingly, if I may say, helped me with that when I get off on my own trajectory, which I really enjoy my own trajectory. The only problem is I know it ends up in the wrong place.
Well, it's interesting you say that over the years of like, you know, you develop and create businesses and you have ideas, and to get started in something from ground zero, such as yourself, I realized like you have these big visions. And we realized over the years, one time we were going over through a leadership program and learning things. And it was like, wow, there is a term for me. Like the one staff member looked and goes, oh, there is like a term for you, you know? And it wasn't a derogatory, but it was a recollection that we all are different. We have talents. And so that label that we put on each other is the reality of like, if we use our talents for that we were given to drive in the right way, when we're not, we're just probably not as impactful. And I learn that lesson every day, right? Like you think that you get somewhere, it's apparently I'm stubborn, but to figure out how that works. But it's amazing to hear. What do we say all the time? It's like the top of the iceberg. Like people see the success, but don't realize all of the trash that's below that, that gets you. I realized in my journey, I had some mentors that had already hit their peak. And when I asked them like, well, I'm doing this from ground zero, they couldn't remember those times the same way. So they gave me theory advice, but couldn't give me how to kind of like grind into it. And so their advice was, well, don't do it, similar to where it was. And so my competitive nature said, well, I'm going to show them, you know, that's a little dangerous, but how do you mix? I'm hearing you say this, and maybe I correct if I'm wrong, but I struggle in our business. We're here to serve and empower those through education, right? And so you have this kind of mission based or mentality. And I had said this to I was at a seminar, and there was a gentleman talking about I used to be in the fire service and other areas, and that camaraderie of people together there was a feeling I've never felt ever again. And I said, how can we take something like that and put it into business? He says, you never can do that. And I'm like, wow, that was really stark and direct. He goes, because that's a different bond than it is. People can leave business. But when your life's on the line, it has a different level of bond. How did you create a culture it seems like about serving and giving, and replicate that in your business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if I agree with that gentleman's theory. We could talk about that some other time. So tell a quick story about this. We were offsite. I was offsite with some of my shareholder friends a couple years ago at another business. And they had their values up on the wall, and they were terrific. And we had a lot of respect for this business. But when we were going back in after break, I stopped at the wall where they had their values up there. And I said, is there any of their values that wouldn't fit inside our organization? And in 15 seconds, all four of my shareholder friends said, yeah, that one wouldn't fit. And they pointed to one that said, we will always place the customer first, or the client first. And our philosophy from the beginning has been we will always place the employee first. And I'm not telling other people that might be listening here today that they should adopt that, but that is a commitment that we've had from the beginning. And beyond that, we have benefited from making an overt commitment to the family of the employee. So this was easier for me when we were 5 or 6 or 8 people, but knowing the spouses, knowing the children, showing up at their basketball games and baptisms and theatrical performances when we were able, recognizing milestones in their lives, letting the family know that they are part of our family, and kind of putting your arms around a bigger community than just the people whose name is on the paycheck has been a commitment that we've had since the beginning. It's one I'm completely confident will continue. They may not carry out exactly the same way that I did, but that ethic will not leave. And so I think that's been a big part of what we then emanate from the inside out. A related story would be that I had the opportunity to work with an emerging leader that was taking over a ministry organization from a founder who had been in that role for almost 40 years. And it's a founder that if I said his name, everybody would know it. And they asked me, could you help his successor through, some of these next couple years? And so we had a good time with that. And the successor's still there, and the organization's doing wonderfully thanks to God's blessing and his leadership. But anyway, I guess when we were invited to some sort of birthday party or something for his family, and we were leaving, and his wife said to Carolyn and me on the way out, she said, thank you to Roger and North Group for things you've done for my husband, but what we never anticipated was that you would care about and become part of our family. And so it's
amazing.
That has to start internally, because I can't really ask my employees to take on that type of commitment, to do those after hours sort of things, to be at the memorial services and the major events that go beyond just that person's life or that organization's life, if we're not doing it for them to begin with. So that's been a big part of the cohesion, I think, that we've built. And that, I didn't want that to be just my job or just the leader's job, although I felt like I needed to set an example of that. But then that becomes everybody's job. And things come back around. We just had one of our employees the last few months lose his father. It wasn't premature. He was 91 years old. We knew where he was headed for eternity, but we also knew that our employee friend had a very, very close relationship with his father. And so I don't know how many people from North Group showed up to support him in various ways, but certainly at the visitation, the memorial service, and beyond. And we don't have to tell people to do that. They choose to do it.
So they take a little bit of time to get to know everyone at a different level. I think sometimes I was criticized for that one time, because they're like, well, you're getting into their personal life. And I'm like, well, I'm just asking a question, being a human. And they were more concerned about the HR ramifications than well, we can't just be humans to each other, So sometimes I get a little overly passionate about that.
Most of your human resource challenges or risks, and human resources is largely about risk management, which is fine. We need that in place, will be minimized if you have genuine caring and relationship for your people. And you have to choose people for your organization. That we use a phrase, a kind of a Christianese sort of phrase, where we said, when we hire employees, we are not going to evangelize them, we are going to disciple them. And what that means is we're only hiring people whose life has already shown indications that it's going to work well for them in our culture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
So we're not taking somebody who's never been exposed to this type of behavior before, who has not shown evidence of caring and serving and those sorts of things in their life, and putting themselves out for other people and putting their ego behind somebody else. We're going to hire people who already show some evidence of that and just want to grow in that when they're around other people who have the same attitude. And
it's amazing that you say that, because it's we had that recollection many years ago. We realized as a team, a leadership team, why were we upset in certain circumstances? And this was prior to us really reflecting. And we wrote some words down. We said, wait a minute, this is our core values. Like, this is how we operate. Yeah. And each time we felt that a core value was being, minimized or at risk, it really internally made us upset. And the day we made the shift to that, really realized that everybody is a great person, but we realized that maybe we were on the same page.
Yeah.
And one core value that we have is called "we before me," and it has a definition.
Yeah.
And it helps us understand that it's the greater good in mind, not just the individual person. And so where we want to be competitive, are we lifting our team members up? And it's interesting. I had a recollection the other day when we hired someone. They said, I didn't believe what everyone said, because I've been through so many interviews that they tell me how it's going to be on paper, but like you actually live it. And that stunned me, because we realize when we onboard people now that they are having a changing kind of moment of that they've not experienced necessarily a culture.
That's terrific.
Although we screw that up frequently sometimes, we're human beings.
Give yourself a little grace.
But it was a recollection of similar, I think, to what you had said earlier about like, how do you mix kind of serving people and being kind and loving, right? In a world of, I was in a series of my life that it felt like I was the only man standing, right? Like everything was negative, and that people were bombarding you with, because they didn't like that you were being kind, and they said that you're destroying things by actually helping people like that. We're not going to make money. And I was like, wow, like these were competitors.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if I stand alone, it's pretty lonely, but like we shouldn't do things just for money, right? Like it should have some sort of, and so it was a eye-opening experience to try to navigate that individually. It gets a little lonely sometimes, right?
Sure.
Well, you talked about your career, right? And was there ever a time that, like in leadership, that like you talked a little bit about authority, right? But then now you talk a lot about service. So like what was kind of the changing moment for you from going kind of maybe from authoritative leadership to like service leadership? Like it sounds like it was part of your beginning. Did you ever realize that there was kind of a change or a learning moment there at all?
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I think that for me, that would have been more of an evolution than, waking up one day and thinking I was headed the wrong direction. So I have a saying, and I'm sure, you come up with these sayings and you want to credit yourself with them being unique with yourself, but there's nothing new under the sun. But I say the best way to lead an organization is to push decisions down to the lowest level of competence. And so, there's decisions that maybe in an organization, somebody else could make more quickly or with more decisiveness.
Right.
But it should be made at a different level of organization, or things are going to flow back to you. You're going to get overly busy. People are going to become dependent. And most importantly, the people below you are not going to have a chance to feel the same respect, to make the same mistakes that you made in order to get there. So pushing authority down in the organization, decision-making responsibilities down in the organization has been a theme that we've followed, I think, in our own organization, but certainly with our clients. But don't get me wrong, I like authority. Another saying I have is I'm about getting as much authority as I can and using as little of it as possible.
Fair enough.
Given to you because people see you as competent,
and good at leading
and good at things, but don't use it unless you have to.
That's right.
Allow other people to flower and grow under the gifts that they've been given, and don't get all upset when they make a little mistake here and there, because actually the mistakes are usually just that they did something different than you would have done in a gray situation. Because if black and white situations are coming to me, that's a mistake to begin with. Why are they coming to me?
Right.
So, it's just somebody going in a different direction than you would have gone, and you're thinking, oh, I would have done something different than that. But I've learned, not always, but certainly in the last 4.5 years, as my friend Jerry Murray, who's our president, what a terrific leader he is, has made some decisions that are different than I would have made. And I didn't always do well with that. I criticized some of those probably the first 18 months of our leadership transition. And, but we had excuse the term, we had to come to Jesus. Can I tell you a quick story?
I say that frequently.
I got to tell you a quick story. So hopefully this will be helpful to folks. So about 18 months into our transition, this is Jerry becoming the president in early 2020. And so it's probably late 2022. We had a difference of opinion over something that was actually very, very small.
Okay.
Not even worth talking about. And I guess I had voiced that difference of opinion with a level of volume that probably wasn't necessary. So we went into our one-on-one, which is a key, and it's a key for a departing leader and an arriving leader to be meeting on a regular basis and really having it out in private.
Right. Yeah.
And Jerry is one of the calmest, most reasoned, most kind people that I know. And he threw up all over me.
Oh, no.
And you know what? About halfway into it, I realized, darn it, he's right.
He was churning on that for a while, though. It sounds like
he was, because he's smarter than I am to begin with. So, but God gave me a moment there where I thought, if Jerry is this fired up, there has to be, he just is not the type of person to even have volume in his voice if he hadn't really thought it out, and if I hadn't really put 93 octane in his tank. And that courage on his part to elevate under that circumstance was a gift to our relationship, because I went out of there thinking, I've been getting in his way. And I've been getting in his way on, let's call them gray area things that he wanted to go one direction. I probably would have gone another. And 3 of the 4 years we've had since he's been the president of the organization have been the 3 best years in our history.
That's amazing.
So the proof is in his leadership.
Yeah. As Lencioni says, right? Like, be humble.
Yes.
You know?
And that doesn't come easily to me.
It can be hard, right? Like when you're passionate.
Oh. Yeah. Well, and look, I was the small business person of the year in 2019. I must be all that in a bag of chips, Just ridiculous how you think about yourself sometimes, until your wife tells you to take out the trash. Then you realize, I really should be unloading the dishwasher.
Yeah, right.
Unloading the dishwasher is a key to marriage.
I have the dish duty right now. And I don't know if I love it or not.
Are you good at it?
I don't know if I'm the best at it, but when the kids are home, they definitely test my patience on how good of a dish man I am. But it does. We realize similar at home, right? Everybody had a chore to hold each other accountable.
That's good.
Well, you've worked with a lot of leaders, right? What do you think like the biggest misconception is about like leadership or even servant leadership? Like that you feel like from your years of talking to other leaders, or maybe people that are coming up as leaders, like they have as a misconception of what really leadership is?
Yeah, what a great question. Really making me think here. So I think I'll just identify 2 things, and we could probably add 6 or 8 things if we had time here. I would say, one, that technical competence carries the day. That's a misconception. Once you get to a senior leadership type, whether it's a 12-person organization or 1,200-person organization, 12,000, that technical competence carries the day. And I think you and I talked about this earlier before we started the recording, that too many people get promoted to a level of leadership or management or supervisory because of their technical competence. The farther you go in terms of leadership, the less important technical competence is. Now, you can't ignore it or be an idiot.
That's right.
The second thing is saying that, again, we came up with, and I'll take credit for, but I'm sure it wasn't original with me. But since the beginning of North Group's business, we've used a phrase, being comes before doing. So I think the biggest misconception is that most of leadership is about getting things done. I think you absolutely have to do that. I mean, how are you going to business
you have to get some results done?
How are you going to do, deliver for your clients without execution? But I believe, and this is, I think most people, when they really think about it, would probably agree that every human being has a genuine meter. Some of them are sharper than others, but we eventually figure out whether the other people in our life are actually for us or not, whether their words and their actions line up with where their heart is. And they eventually figure it out. And their response to leaders who are partially there or not there at all actually gives you less productivity, which eventually, in a well-managed organization, should show up on the numbers scoreboard.
Right.
It gives you less productivity if they haven't been able to commit themselves to the idea that their leaders are actually for them, FOR. And when you commit yourself, and this starts in the family, of course, being for your wife, being for any other people, children, grandchildren, aunts, uncles, parents, whatever, that are put under your care or that you have some influence on, they all figure it out.
Yeah.
And in business, I think the biggest misconception is that leadership is about execution and doing things, getting things done. And it is. But the productivity of getting things done depends on the degree to which people believe that their leaders are actually sincere and genuine about what they say the organization is about the value system and the way they get treated as individuals. They will stick around and give their best for leaders who are sold out for their success. And they'll give just a little bit less. And for most businesses, the difference, in success is somewhere in the 95 to 98% range. Most people will give 95%. The leaders who can get 98 from their team because people know they're for them. That's the long-term difference. Short-term, you can squeeze stuff out of people. You can make a little extra money. You can go a little bit over the budget. You can take a little bit more out of people's personal life. But in the long term, if you're committed to the long term, it really comes down to people believing whether you're genuine about their success.
I think that's probably hard for some, right, that have been an individual contributor and now have to oversee people.
Yes.
What we call, or like LMA, lead and manage, and hold them accountable. Tell us what you see as a journey for those that are probably like, well, man, this is hard, right? Like I went to contributing into the team and now like, I feel like I have to be kind of their buddy and nice and maybe go around the loop instead of just being like, hey, listen, you're performing, you're not. Like they can still be kind-hearted, but it seems like we see a lot when that transition happens. It seems like a big struggle, right? Because now you're creating this level of coaching and leaving the mentality of individualism to being it's the greater good of the group, not just me anymore. How do you see the most successful people navigate that want to do that? Is it inherent, you feel like in them that they just see and believe in other people beyond them? Or do you think that that's a learned trait?
Yes.
Okay. Yes and yes.
It's both of those things. I think it helps when people move into some sort of position of leadership or management supervisory over other people, that they have had some sort of experience already in their life gifted to them by somebody else. Could be a parent, a teacher, a coach, a former boss, that has demonstrated at least some of that, and they felt that. And if they can think back and say, how did that get produced in me? That little, I was willing to take it from 95 to 98 for that. Why was that? And could I hold on to something from that and take that into the way that I lead people. So that I think that helps. And then certainly having somebody or some group of people that is guiding you through that, and will, we use 3 words for it, will help you will be responsible for your development through what we call well-being. Are they interested in my personal well-being, which certainly has to do with at work, but also has to do with the factors that affect how we come to work each day. The second would be accountability, that we establish some agreement between us that's clear about what you're accountable for and how I'm going to interact with you when you meet or exceed that accountability, and more difficult, how I'm going to interact with you when you fall short of that.
That's the hard one.
Right. That's a hard one. And then the third one, which a lot of young leaders really struggle with, is you have a responsibility to help develop. So that's the third one, welfare, accountability, development, to help develop that person in some way. And a lot of our young leaders really struggle with, well, I'm developing myself, and I'm 30 years old and I have a 50-year-old technical person that I'm now responsible for. How in the world would I develop that person? Well, first of all, you've got to get their permission. And the permission comes through the other pieces, which is I care about them as a person. I care about their welfare. I've established some way in which we're going to practice mutual accountability, which creates, you got caring, then you got respect, then you've got the opportunity to have some conversations with them about how they can grow as a human being. You may not have the answers, but you can certainly ask the question.
One thing I'm hearing from you that's resonating in my head is curiosity.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
Absolutely.
Right. Like if you're not curious enough to ask questions or to know anything about someone, then how can you make that change? That's pretty interesting, just kind of to hear how you're phrasing those things. And
thank you for saying that, because that really applies. We like most good businesses, we have a secret sauce of what we're looking for with people that are eventually going to come on to our team. And I'm not going to give you the whole secret sauce here. So but one of the things we talk about is relentless curiosity.
Yeah.
Is a relentless curiosity about the world, relentless curiosity about how things work, and relentless curiosity about other people, which if you pursue that, it makes you less selfish, because your mind and your heart starts to fill up with questions about the world around you or the person in front of you. And in concentrating on that, telling your story, getting your opinion in, telling them what you think about the world becomes less important, because you have an opportunity to learn about them, which in turn happens to make me smarter too, if I'm willing to listen to it. So relentless curiosity is a great gift to develop as a leader. And for young leaders, is just develop a relentless curiosity about the world around you, but perhaps more important, but not more importantly, but alongside it is a relentless curiosity about the vicissitudes of human nature.
Absolutely.
Because every person is just a little bit different. And if I go back to what I was telling you 7 minutes ago about Jerry when he came after me in that meeting, I had never seen him do that before. I probably haven't seen him do it since. Maybe he has, but I wasn't there. I'm glad he didn't do it to me again. But that was something I'd not seen before. And it caused me to really pay attention. And he didn't have to get too far into his critique for me to realize, you know what? I better listen to this. He's right. He's actually, I already know he cares about me. I already know he cares about my welfare. We have this accountability relationship. He's actually developing me in this minute to help me understand that the behavior I was engaging in was not the direction that I wanted to go.
Well, and I think one key thing you said there too, many key things, but the one thing about that, there's already trust, right?
Yes,
so I think when we hear someone and we trust and respect them, it even hurts a little more, right? But we're willing to listen, although maybe we're responding kind of out of emotion. I think that trust is really key, right? So we build that trust and people can trust each other. It's really hard to kind of give advice or feedback. But it's just rolling in my head as you say that, just kind of different pictures of different things that are happening. Cause, when you build that trust with someone, you have that respect and and are willing to listen to kind of those components. But
100%.
I'm curious about that curiosity, right? I don't see as much interest in the curiosity of things. Maybe it's just a different way of gathering the curiosity. Maybe it's more online, or maybe it's more on social media, but I don't see a lot of questions anymore. People seem to tell us, and I even find that in some of my peer groups, right? Like they're like, well, why do you ask so many questions? Well, how can I come to a conclusion if I don't actually know how you feel about it, right? Yeah. And so I think it's really amazing that that's part of your culture as well, about the curiosity, because you do learn a lot. Many times that I've put my foot in my mouth, it is because I was not curious to ask the question. In reality, I made a assumption on something wrong. Yeah. And so, it's ever changing, right?
Curiosity allows us to overcome wrong assumptions,
right?
Or just slightly flawed assumptions,
right?
Keep asking questions. You might find out that long-held theory you have has a crack in it.
That is different, right?
Yeah, I just went through that in the last week.
Did you really?
Personal situation that I had where I had developed a theory about why something was happening, and it wasn't just a crack; it got shattered. I was completely wrong.
Did it really? Yeah,
I learned from it.
You do learn from it. I realized my oldest son, the one day came to me and realized, well, all right. He held me accountable to something and said, listen, like, I know it's coming from love, but here is my perception of what's happening. And I don't want it to go to this level, right? Like he referenced another family member or something. And I was like, wow, what maturity at like 20 some years old.
Oh, good for you.
And although I was fuming inside, right? Like you're like, the reflection was like, wow, to have enough ability or comfort to bring it up. And then followed it up with, well, I see that you're making change there. I'm like, whoa, are you my like father now? Was a humbling experience to realize that we all want to know where we can improve. Ultimately, maybe our response is different, but yeah, that's amazing.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Well, you talk about, and you've built a lot of leaders. What would you say, like the top 3 things are essential, to a great leader? I think you mentioned some of them already, but
Yeah. Well, we could go a number of different directions with that, but, I think I'll go this direction. We're going to leave integrity and genuineness as permission to play for leaders.
Okay.
And I think we'll go back over some ground you and I already covered here. I like to say that over the course of my career, the things that have been most helpful to me have been asking good questions, listening intently to the responses, and occasionally commenting on whether those responses fit together.
True that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's well said.
So I went to a sales seminar. I was a sales manager in my former life, and in my former vocational life. I went to a sales seminar one day that the fellow that was giving it was manipulative and self-focused and those sorts of things. But he taught a process for asking questions that just, this is 30 plus years ago, but it just made so much sense to me that I decided I am going to master that process. Master is probably too strong a term, but I believe that I have over the years to the point where I do not need to think about it anymore. He had a term for it, which is unimportant, but just the ability to ask questions that take people a step beyond where they would normally go in their own thinking. And then if trust is created inside of that interest that you're taking with the other person, then maybe they're willing to express to you, based on the trust and the incisiveness of the question, something that they weren't able to draw out of themselves previously. Then you have the honor, like standing, it's like Moses at the burning bush. That happens every once in a while to me, where I think, wow, this is holy ground. Like you're sitting with a person, Nicholas, this happened to you, I'm sure, where you've just known the person for 90 minutes or something, and they lean forward and they say, I'm going to share something with you that I've hardly shared with anybody else. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. It's the connection. Yeah.
This is holy ground.
Yeah.
And so there's a integrity commitment to that somehow they've sensed in you that genuineness of interest. And then, so that's a being thing. Then the doing thing is that you've asked enough good questions that it's taken them to a place that they've been able to think about something and then in turn verbalize something that is helpful to them because they're in an environment that allows them to know themselves a little better and then evaluate how they're going to move forward from there. And maybe you can play a role in that, or maybe you just listen to it because now they're figuring it out right before your eyes.
Yeah.
And then just shut up and listen.
It resonates to me of a statement one time that I realized is there's a difference between selfless and selfish.
Oh, boy.
Right. And man, every time you're thinking about like you have the answer you're trying to tell someone, that I was like, wait, if I'm selfless and I'm really trying to lead to help them, then I shouldn't ever be thinking about me and my result. And I've gotten myself in trouble with that sometimes, right? Because you're like, hey, I can just help someone, right? Everything is about helping. But in reality, you want to help them, from what I'm hearing, kind of get to their own conclusion too, right?
I think it's much better for people to get there on their own than, and I have an ego and a professional will and all this kind of thing where I'd like somebody selfishly to go away and say, hey, Roger was really helpful today, gave me this great insight. But what lasts more than that is when they go away believing that they got to it on their own. And maybe they did just because we created their environment. Then they own it themselves.
That's right. There's that
they're not
selflessness
dependent on
part
me for the next
right
insight. They can grow in the 30 days that exist the next time they even see me, because I'm not walking around behind them all the time.
That's right.
So
get
rid of that ego that says, oh, I want that person to leave our conversation today and say, isn't Nicholas terrific, or isn't Roger terrific? I don't want them to be thinking about that. I want them to be thinking about, I think God's building something in me that can be helpful to me in my journey, to my marriage, to my parenthood, to my vocation, to my service to community. I don't want them thinking about me on the way.
Yeah, right. Just like those who helped me along the way.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's so many great things that you're saying. I realized, or we read so many great leadership books and other things. Right. And I had started earlier about talking about like that journey of kind of like centering. And I realized, hey, there's one book that gives me all the answers. And when I started reading closely more to the Bible, I was like, is it weird that every problem that I have every morning when I read that is somehow answered there, and I really had a recollection of like, wow, like there is, if you kind of live that life and you're going to mess it up every day, we're not perfect human beings, but I had another recollection of a organization I'm part of, and someone had done a talk in the morning and realized the lasting impact, like you're talking about, of someone. It was a pastor, right? And our priest, and somehow in the same room, all of us had been impacted by this man and had no idea. But I realized one thing that I'm not good at, that he was patience. He would plant a seed and then be patient and not bring it up. And I'm learning how to be better at that. But he would plant a seed. And then this gentleman said, it took me 3 years to show up. And he goes, the day I showed up, he saw me. He came to me and he said, welcome. I'm glad you're finally here.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow. Can you imagine like having that impact? And to your point, like, right, it wasn't, he did not want the praise, but
it's not about
to be able to learn how that is done is amazing. Yeah. Well, you talk about your early days of North Group, right? Like, tell us some lessons that you learned from kind of starting a business.
Oh, my. Well, patience, which has never come easily to me, doesn't come easily to most entrepreneurs, doesn't come easy to most Americans, and certainly doesn't come easy to most people of the male gender. So we all have that in a variety. But when Laura and I started, you're starting from scratch, and you only, we had a little bit of seed money, but not a lot. but we had a commitment to just staying in touch with people and believing that the consistent planning and watering would eventually end up in something that could pay the next month's rent and salaries and that sort of thing. So the first couple of years were challenging, but what I would say is I think this is a gift. It bothers some people. I'm not sentimental, so I spend very little time looking back. For instance, if you would ask me, what were your activities last week, I would struggle to tell you. If you say, what do you have on your docket for next week, I could probably tell you everything that I have. Why am I bringing that up? Because there was always the backup position when we started a business that had no form to it. Like we said, we were leadership consultants, and there's lots of them out there now, but that term didn't even exist in the late 1990s. We knew we could go back to a former occupation. We could get back into sales, we could get back into insurance, the things that we were educated in. We could fall back on that. But I decided I'm just not going to spend any time thinking about that, because I need to put all my vocational energy into making this thing work. So not looking back on a decision that doesn't have 100% chance of working out. Right. But rather than thinking about, what else could I have done? Or, is there a fallback position here? Putting all your vocational energy into making the thing that you committed to work. And then, I've said a lot of times that I have no idea if what we started and now have here in central Pennsylvania could have worked anywhere else. Maybe. But the key was that I had Laura and I and other people that came on board. We had already been part of this community for 16 years. We had been engaged in community service, hopefully selflessly, built, people call them networks, but just friendships, people that had some regard for you on some level. So when we started out, we just called all those people and said, would you give us 60 or 90 minutes to come out and tell you about this concept that we have? And boy, a large majority of those people said, sure, when can you come? I'd love to hear about it. And eventually a few of them became clients, and eventually those clients told some other people. And so for me, and this isn't true for all businesses, but for North Group, it has been. And when people say, well, how did you get here from there? I said, well, one employee and one client at a time. And just following through, if you see somebody on the street that you haven't seen for a while and you say, we ought to get together, then follow through and get together. If you have no intention of doing that, just say, it's nice to see you.
Right.
The people that say, hey, let's get together and play golf this fall or next spring, or let's have lunch, or let's go to the theater, or whatever that might be. If I'm going to take responsibility for that,
you're going to own it.
I put it, I'm going to own it. And I think that particularly here in central Pennsylvania, where people have a high regard for that,
the value,
follow through and the hard work and the commitment, that works. So I'm sure I wasn't 100% on it, but that's something I've really worked on. Is even when you meet, before you respond and say we ought to get together, make sure that you're committed to do it, that you have the capacity to do it, and that you have the will to do it, and then say it. Then hold yourself accountable for it, and then follow through.
Because it hurts worse, right? Because then it feels like this veiled, invite or something like that.
Yeah, and then you get to wondering whether the person even likes you to begin with.
Like, was it a purpose? As we start to wrap up today, talk about, you do a lot of volunteering, right? You mentioned that.
Yeah.
And for those that say, that are leaders, that say, like, I'm too busy, right, to give back. What's your response to that?
Well, it depends on how well I know that person, but I might use I might sneak out a term that you and I aren't going to use on this podcast and say that's not correct.
That's not correct.
To me, if you're going to extract something from from a person or a community or a relationship, you got to put something into it first.
You got to give some.
So if I'm going to at some point make money, gain clients from the community around me, don't I have to put something into it first? And it was such a gift, Nicholas, it's going to get too long, so I'll try to give the cliff notes of it. When I went to work for Murray Insurance, great organization, 1989, I had a mentor there. His name was Joe Nolt, may he rest in peace, just a great businessman. And I'm probably within a month of getting on board, he said, Roger, he said, I want you to go out and find a cause or causes in this community that you want to serve. And I want you to go volunteer, go get attached to it. And if that's during the day, that's fine with me. This is a community organization. You're a leader in this organization. I want you to be above me. He got me into a program, which I'm still very fond of, still exists in the community, called Leadership Lancaster. I was 1990, I graduated that a mere 34 years ago.
Wow.
That was a launch of my community service career. That gave me a beautiful education in what makes Central Pennsylvania, Lancaster County, more specifically, such a great community. The civic endeavors, and so that launched my community service career. And Joe supported that. Laura and I took that into business. It's an ethic of our business now. And one of my favorite scripture verses that applies to this in a broader way is Hebrews 10:24 in the New Testament. It says, let us spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Well, how do we do that? Well, we do that by giving of ourselves. Right. So everybody that's part of North Group understands, and goes well beyond North Group, speaking about my own company here, understands that part of their responsibility is to put something into this community. Yeah, even give it first.
Right.
Give it first before you expect anything in return. And then a lesson I've learned later in life is stop looking for reciprocity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely, because some give to get. Right. Yeah. And so that's not the recipe for success.
Yeah. Adam Grant wrote a book a few years ago about givers and takers.
Yes.
Be a giver.
Yeah.
You'll eventually get it back, but don't expect it. Don't count it.
That's right. Don't go into it.
Yeah.
Doing that. Right.
Yeah.
It's there's another one called Go Giver.
Yes.
Which I find is amazing.
Terrific book.
Yeah.
Terrific book.
Well, finally, as we kind of wrap out today. So you're not you're doing a little consulting, volunteering, you're golfing. So what brings you the most joy these days?
Yeah, I think I'm on a journey to continue to develop my character by I'm learning to sit, Nicholas. I've never been good at
sitting. Yeah.
And just sitting with God. And I heard a story a couple months ago. I've told it to a few people, and I'm nowhere near this, but it was a story, probably a true story, about a priest that had this country church, country, parish somewhere. And he noticed that this older gentleman was coming in every morning and just sitting in the pew and just sitting stock still. And so he started the time, and he realized this guy was doing this for 2 hours every day.
Wow.
And he didn't know the gentleman. So finally the priest went out and introduced himself. Said, sir, I was just curious about, what you're doing here. He said, I'll probably get choked up when I say this, but he said, I just come here to smile at God and appreciate him smiling back at me. And I thought, wow, if I would even give, 5 or 10 minutes, not even 2 hours to that every day, to realize God's love and plan for humanity, and then he has a plan for me. And that if doing that every morning would allow me to just be a little bit more giving, a little bit more selfless, then good things are going to happen from there. So I'm learning to sit. I'm learning to take better care of my soul. Spending a little bit more time thinking about what I could do for other people, like stuff that's not in the limelight. I've gotten way too much credit for doing easy stuff in my life. Way too much credit for sitting in a boardroom for 2 hours. I'm like, credit for that. I mean, how hard is that? Really? Yeah. But finding somebody who needs, who can't get out and needs the weeds pulled in their yard. And nobody's going to know you did it.
That's right.
And my love language is words of affirmations. I'm constantly courting praise. Let's just stop that and develop our character. Yeah. So I think, that and just, just appreciating the season of life that God has given me to become a better husband, father, grandfather, community leader, and servant. I mean, that sounds high and mighty. Everybody that's listening is doing that on some level, I'm sure. But I have just a little less doing on my schedule these days. So I want to plug a little more being into it.
Sounds like you're in reflection, right?
Yeah. Plus, I'm trying to get my handicap down, and it's not going all that well. But
hey, practice makes perfect.
Well,
right?
But bad practice makes bad results.
Oh, goodness.
But we're having fun with it. Thank you for asking.
Well, thank you, Roger. Well, folks, that's a wrap with Roger North. Proof that you can transition a company, a career, and maybe even your golf swing with grace. So from boardrooms to beach chairs, Roger's shown us that servant leadership isn't just a strategy, it's a lifestyle. And if you're take nothing else away from today. Remember, build people, not just businesses. And if that fails, at least book a tea time at Hilton Head. So, Roger, thanks for sharing your wisdom. And to our listeners, go out there and lead like you've got 6 grandkids watching. Because if that doesn't keep you accountable, nothing will. So until next time, this has been the Servant Leadership Library. I'm Nicholas Paulukow, reminding you that serve first, lead always, and keep it cheeky enough to stay human. All right. Thank you, everybody.